You know that. Some of our best pilots would never be trained today. Wiley Post was monocular. Britain's great ace, Edward Manick, had astigmatism in his left eye so bad he was monocular. France's grand ace down there on the left side, he's actually the second grand ace. He was a real humble guy, everybody liked him. Their number one grand ace was a real jerk, and nobody could stand to be around him. But Gunnemer had active pulmonary TB, cough up blood, shaking, chills, fever, climb into the cockpit, take off, and go shoot down one of the German pilots. Germany's ace, Bulky, who invented fighter tactics, was a severe asthmatic. You can tell by his barrel chest in the picture that he had a lot of hyperinflation and gas trapping from asthma. Next slide. Escadrille Lafayette pilot William Stahl, American, had a hard case of German measles, was slightly deaf and had poor vision. Frank Luke was nearly a psychopath, antisocial personality disorder, could never pass the psych exam for flying today. Canada's captain Sidney Timbertoes Carlin got his leg shot off in the trenches before they trained him to fly, and the great one, von Richthofen, about halfway through his career around kill number 40, had a severe accident with a closed head injury, suffered raging migraine headaches and a mercurial personality after that, went on to shoot down another 40 Allied aircraft before he was killed with a lucky shot by a Canadian from the trenches. Next slide. So we don't know what's critically important to make a good pilot. We certainly know being very physically fit helps, but it doesn't make the man. Humans are wonderfully adaptable. Aircraft accidents are extremely rare, relatively speaking. And empiric standards don't really work. Today, 40% of the Air Force's fighter pilots wear contact lenses. And yet we still continue to lean on empiric standards. Right now there's a big kerfuffle about color vision. They are cracking down on color vision. Like they've got almost a superhuman standard now for color vision. And when you ask them in conferences, why is there we got a spike in accidents? No. Can you prove that the Navy that still uses the Farnsworth Liner test has any more accidents than anybody else? No. Why are you doing this? They don't know. They're just doing it. And we don't develop aircraft around pilots. We develop an aircraft that we think is really cool, and then we stick the pilot in and we say, we're not to fly this, which is backwards. Next slide. Grab my drink. I stay up here, I don't have to see. So 95 years ago, clearly we lost more pilots to an absolute absence of all medical standards and whether empiric or otherwise in physical fitness reasons. And so we went on in the United States to develop these very strict standards, and we were still losing one pilot for every 720 hours of flight operations. There were no flight surgeons, AMEs, civilian flight surgeons, or military, and if you want to see a commanding officer as an Army Air Corps pilot, or if you want to see a doctor as an Army Air Corps pilot, you had to go through your commanding officer first. So by 1917, in that environment, the Army let Theodore Lister establish a little rickety lab in Mineola, the city of Mineola on Long Island, New York. And with a small staff, a few wooden buildings, he began building the United States Army Aeromedical Activity Center, which then spawned the Air Force's aeromedical activity. And today, you have lots and lots of investigation in human factors and the man-machine interface. Next slide. Now, enter the feds. For those of you who are staunch Republicans, I got one for you here. President Coolidge, Calvin Coolidge, was a Republican. And he signed into law one of the biggest pieces of federal regulation this country has ever seen, called the Air Commerce Act. And the first certificate, notice it's a photo ID, was offered to Orville Wright. He declined. No one seems to know why he turned that down, so it went to the first branch chief, William McCracken. And I want the pilots and the maintainers here to begin to think now. I'm paralleling two things here. At the same time, the first aircraft certified was a Buell Airster, CA-3. So we've now developed certification of pilots and aircraft kind of parallel. And we actually use the same process for both. So if you're how many are owner-operators of aircraft? How many are aircraft maintainers? French terms. Guys all in the back there, trying to find a way out the back door. How many are just professional pilots and never look under the hood because you don't have to? The mechanics do it for you. Okay. So by 1930, we had hired Louis Bauer from the Army. He became the first federal air surgeon. So this act empowered them to set up a federal air surgeon and gave him authority then to appoint local aviation medical examiners, or I like to call them flight surgeons. And then the regional flight surgeon system and the air medical standards that, no kidding, are just about word for word the same as they are today. It's stunning, the similarities after all this time. Next slide. So aviation organizations have to establish some kind of a standard on a continuum of anybody can fly, we're going to do away with the certification system, to nobody flies. And all through my professional life, it's really been, it's better to err on the side of safety than on the side of sorrow. And that trend is slowly being rolled back. I don't know where it's going at the end of the day. Next slide. So begin with the premise that in the interest of safety, the U.S. government, representing the taxpayers, has a mandate from the American taxpayer to ensure the health of the pilots and the health of the aircraft that they certify. It's not unreasonable. It's just not always convenient. So all of you should know that there are about 15 specific illnesses mentioned in the Federal Air Regulations, the FARs, that specifically address things like diabetes and heart disease. And unless you think that there then is a chink in the fence you can slip through, there's an overarching law that says that you yourself cannot, nor can you allow somebody else to operate an aircraft with a medical condition that they are aware of that could impair them. This means you and the guy you're with. Next slide. When I started doing this work at the urging of Vinny Pody and some of his friends at the Army ASF there in Grand Ledge, the Army Guard unit there, it was paper-based, triplicate. These guys had come in with 3 volumes dating back to Vietnam. I won't mention any names here. These 3 volumes, and their FAA form would be, we would aviator lies all. No. And I would say, Tom, you can't, this is a federal document. You can't just say, I've got this stuff. I know this isn't true. Shut up, doc, just sign the ticket. There was very little oversight. Medical tickets were even sold. There was one instance, or more than one instance, where there was a can on the porch of the doctor's house and a bunch of signed certificates. Drop your 20 bucks in the can, gone fishing, have your certificate, be on your way. Not anymore. Next slide. It's real web-based, real-time, live. They're watching what you're doing with every single keystroke. Everything is cross-referenced. State DOTs, you get a DUI in California, you best not hide that. AIMWIT's PEPs for the Air Force, Army Aeros, Navy NAMI, state DOTs, and insurance clearinghouses for prescriptions. Really, you can't fill a prescription in this country without that information going into a database. I don't care if you walk up with a prescription from a physician, signed in ink, and your $100 bill, toss it down on the counter and say, give me my drugs. You'll get your script filled, but the computer knows. So if you ever had an illusion of privacy, you best disabuse yourself of that right now. Next slide. And aircraft accidents of any monetary value are invested by insurance company gumshoes. Retired doctors and nurses that have made a life work now doing medical record investigation. If they go back into your medical file after an accident and they find there's something you didn't tell the FAA about, then your ticket was given to you fraudulently. And if your ticket is fraudulent, then they ain't paying on the aircraft accident. I mean, you stick this tear rotor in a fence post and you're talking $500,000. And if the insurance company can find a way around that, they're gonna. Next slide. And there's jail penalties. They are sending flight surgeons and pilots to jail if they knowingly falsify that 8500-8 form. So if they feel they can prove it, They'll take the case to federal court. You're looking at potential jail time. You and I in adjoining cells. But lest you pine away for the good old days, remember something. Dean has been around long enough, he knows this. High blood pressure was a career ender. You had a medical problem, you were done. Flying. Period. There was no sports certification class either. Today, less than 1% of pilots lose their tickets permanently. And listen to this. There's a group of 85 people in a small brick building in Oklahoma City. There's 620,000 pilot certificates floating around the United States. They process 440,000 pilot certificates annually, and they process 180,000 pieces of mail a month. There's usually 8 physician reviewers. They're down to 4 right now. You don't want to be working in Oklahoma City. These people are on a limited budget and they are stressed. So that's why they're developing this system where local flight surgeons like myself can give them a hand. Next slide. Amnesty is not an official position, but I've never seen a pilot persecuted or prosecuted for coming forward with information voluntarily. They would rather it's the devil they know than the one they don't. So they don't want to discourage you from being honest about your medical problem. You're going to go through the special issuance, and you're going to be doing some tap dancing on the paperwork. It's very unlikely that they're going to take away your license permanently. Next slide. Med Express. How many of you have heard of Med Express? Do it. It's mandatory by 1 October, but I love it. It's great. It gets rid of that 3-page triplicate form. You're doing it online. Those triplicate forms are expensive. They're more than $1 a piece. It's all web-based. You go in, you get an account, you get a password. They give you a temporary one. It comes to your email address. You change it to a permanent one. Write it down. I'd say about 1 out of every 4 pilots comes in. He's lost his password. He can't remember it. Next slide.
That's not all we lost.
So you can either Google Med Express, and you'll go right there, or if you go to the FAA website, the licenses and certificates, next slide.
Yeah, it's a high def, and it's got a new lens. Wow.
And you'll see where it indicates the 8500-8 form, next slide.
Report medicines that you're taking. Is that the idea?
And we're a little bit off screen there, again, the 8500-8 form, so you go in, click on, these are quickies. So you get an account, you put in your email address and a temporary password, you request an account, it comes to your email, and you go back in and change it. And you fill out the form, just like it's an 8500. Fill out all the boxes, not just the ones that you like. If you have a question, stop and call somebody like myself. It will last for 3 weeks. Box 17, there's a medication box. You'll want to click the add button. When you get down to doctors, if there's more than one, click the add button. So if you have more than one medication, more than one doctor, you have to click the add button, otherwise it won't save it. Next slide. That's what mine looks like. Next slide. Next slide. So when you're done, it will check validation. It won't let you send in a bad ticket. Complete any incorrect work, save it with your password, you print a copy, and you bring it to your flight surgeon appointment with you. Next slide. That's the validation error switch. Next slide. If you don't save the information with your password, it lasts 3 weeks and it's gone. Once you've saved it, it lasts for 60 days. So if you make your flight surgeon appointment for 3 months after you fill this out, it's not going to be there. It has to be validated, if you will, by the appearance of a flight physical that matches up with it within 60 days. Otherwise, it goes away. But once it's matched to a physical, it stays in there forever. And you can go in year to year and change it. So it saves both you and I a lot of painful pencil whipping every year to redo that triplicate form. Next slide. I want you to think about your medical like you would if you're an aircraft maintainer. Most of you didn't raise your hands when I asked if you also own and operate an aircraft, so a little bit of this will be lost on you. But most of you are pilots know aircraft have logbooks. They are maintained in accordance with the directions from the equipment manufacturer and the federal orders, and inspections are annual. Next slide. You have maintenance that's planned annually or every 100 hours, depending on how you use that aircraft. Do you plan it routinely in the middle of a spray season or in the middle of a high op-tempo work season, or do you plan for doing your aircraft maintenance when there's downtime? Now, an operation like this doesn't really work that way, but if you're an ag operator, they do all their work in the winter when they're not using their aircraft. You bring an FAA inspector in on an aircraft modification before you're done, before your paperwork's done. No. Next slide. So for your pilot maintenance, do you plan your medical at times in the year when you know if you had to be grounded, it would be a good time to be down? Now again, that doesn't work so much for this group here, but if it can, that's how you should think about it. Do you have a family physician? How many of you here have a relationship with a primary care physician? How many of you just do what your wife tells you, or go to a docking box, or use the ER? How many of you know what your medical issues are before you go to your flight surgeon appointment? How many of you are keeping track? How many of you call for an appointment to get your medical renewed about a week before it expires? Next slide. There's two ways you're going to get tripped up in the flight surgeon's office. You fail a test in his office. How many tests do we do for reflecting? Check your vision, your hearing, we did your urine, check your blood pressure. That's it. That's not a lot of tests. So the chance you're going to fail one of those is slim. It's usually the history that gets you. And you know what that history is before you ever walk into the doctor's office. If there's a new medication or something's happened to you during the year, those are clues to the flight surgeon that you may have a problem. And if you're on a new medicine, it's usually not the medicine that grounds you, but the condition that called for the new medicine. Next slide. So, once again, I'm pointing out to you, you're in the driver's seat on this. You can go so far as to go dip your own urine. Have one of your nurse buddies check your blood pressure. Get your own hearing test to check your vision. I mean, you're working in a medical institution, you can get all these tests done beforehand, just for grins and giggles. Why not if you got something going on? The point being, you need to clarify where you're at before you walk into the flight surgeon's office, because I'm kind of in a tight spot. Especially if I'm friends with you. I know that, you work for a living. And here you are sitting on my exam table, and now you just told me something that, do I let that slide? Yeah. He's a good guy, if I ground him, he's going to get some disability insurance, and he's got a wife and 4 kids at home, and I don't want to do this. We've been friends for 15 years. Don't do that to me. Because if I get caught stepping out for you, we're both going down. And the system is not forgiving anymore. It isn't the good old day where, it's the pilots and flight surgeons. Next slide. So has anything happened to you? Had any surgeries? Been to the ER? You had a loss of consciousness? Any DUIs? Don't hide the DUIs. It will be discovered. Guaranteed. Next slide. The most common reasons people get grounded are high blood pressure, new history of a closed head injury, a new heart issue, changing your vision, development of diabetes, migraine headaches, which I would put that down on the list part of it. This is the list AMCD gave to me. And here's the big one in the room. This is the 800-pound gorilla. We're going to talk about that shortly. Sleep apnea. This happens regularly. This guy's got a body mass index of 40. I'm the Federal Air Surgeon's consultant on sleep issues for the FAA. This guy's got a body mass index of 40. I can't find his tonsils with both hands on the tongue blade. And really, no kidding, I'm going to say I'm not worried that he might have sleep apnea. And looks me on his body side. Have a family doctor, maintain that relationship, have that relationship about 3 months before your flying physical is due. You can go online and do all the research you want. This is an open book test. You can download what the FAA is going to want and take it to your family doctor and get it all worked up before you ever see me. Novel thought. New onset blood pressure? Follow the recipe. Come see me. Medicine's good. Tolerating it well. Blood pressures are now good. Cholesterol levels good. Kidney function's good. I pick up the phone and call Dr. Shaw down at Great Lakes. Hey, got Dean here. Blood pressure was out of whack. Put him on some medicine. Looking good now. Okay, I can issue locally. Great. I'll just put that in block 60 that I talked to you today so I don't get arrested. Great. All right. Talk to you later. We're done. You get your ticket and eligibility letter shows up in the mail after the fact. Next slide. Dean. You can't see this very well, but over on the left column in black, it says AMCS Online Support. Next slide. That'll lead you in a stepwise fashion. Again, in the left column, disease protocols. You click on disease protocols. Next slide. And next slide. It will give you a recipe for how to handle this problem. You take that to your family doctor and get it taken care of. And this is all public, free, right there at your fingertips with your laptop. Next slide. Now, I've been throwing around a few terms, and these are the terms you begin to hear: special issuance, PI numbers, eligibility letters, denial appeal. Forget about denial appeal. If you're in the denial appeal process, you got trouble, and we're going to be talking on a regular basis. We don't need to know about that. Special issuance and AME assisted special issuance are the two new things. Well, special issuance do it. AME assisted is. Next slide. Here's an eligibility letter. Here's some information that came in. Pilot had, infected in his foot or something, and the flight surgeon told the FAA about it. The FAA will send a letter out saying, okay, we know about this information. As long as you're free of symptoms, you're still eligible to fly. Don't worry about it. So eligibility letter is a good thing. And you'll know that you're good to go before you ever get this in the mail. So really nothing to worry about there. Next slide.